Very interesting article this week in The Nation, which is an old progressive magazine. It's kind of an ironic one coming from them, considering their history in this country. The title is "The Case for Blue State Secession," something that prior to the 2020 election, actually, this was one of my top strategies. I thought that by getting Donald Trump reelected, if that were successful, because of the 4 years of Trump derangement, I thought that it might be possible that after another 4 years of that, or the prospect of that, could trigger some blue state secession, particularly coming off the heels of the Transition Integrity Project, in which which was sort of a war game where John Podesta, playing Joe Biden, called on the West Coast to secede and form the Republic of Cascadia and proclaim Biden to be their president. I thought, oh wow, this would be great if blue states want to secede if Trump gets reelected. And unfortunately, since Trump lost, you have a lot of Democrats, especially blue-pilled Democrats, well, pretty much all of them, who have regained a lot of their faith in democracy because all of a sudden now things go their way, and now you have the Republicans who are, I guess, losing faith in the federal government and national elections and things, since there's now a Democratic trifecta controlling Washington. And so now I've turned my attention more towards red state secession and red states fighting back and nullifying federal laws. Well, I'm glad to see that there's somebody in the nation who has not lost focus of the blue state secession strategy. Because to be honest, the Democrats have a lot of good talking points on their side as to why they should secede. They say, hey, we pay more in taxes. We're net taxpayers in the union. The blue states tend to pay more money in taxes to the federal government than they get back in terms of federal spending. It sounds like a good enough reason to secede on its own. They have big economies. They would do well as independent countries. If California seceded, it'd be one of the biggest economies in the world. All these things, you've heard these talking points before. Of course, the Constitution is racist. The Electoral College is racist. The Senate is racist because it all goes to, ironically, it's racist because it favors minority rights. It makes it hard for a simple majority to just steamroll the minority of this country because of the way that the Senate is set up. And so, if you are one of these people on the left who would like to have this big progressive government that obviously is not going to happen under our current system, if you secede and all the blue states form their own union and they create their own constitution, they could create their progressive utopia. To that extent, the article was not adding a whole lot new. It was pretty much the same argument I've heard before, and that's not a bad argument. From their perspective, if that's how you feel, if you're on that side, I would say, hey, more power to you. I'd be very happy to see you do it, and I hope that all you people can be happy. I don't like seeing all these people angry and enraged by Trump over the last 4 years. I think it's very unhealthy that people act like that. And if people could have, if you could make all these people's political dreams come true while also not affecting me, I'd be very happy for them. In fact, I think that the peaceful divorce option, the dissolution of the United States, secession, whatever you want to call it, should be something that people who are passionate about politics on either side should be able to unite on. They should unite and say, you know what, we have irreconcilable differences. As long as one of us is winning, the other side is going to be very upset, and we're going to feel like losers. There's no scenario where everybody wins unless we decide to peacefully disassociate and go our separate ways. America can still exist, but the United States, this political construct that we have over all of us should disappear, and we should be able to, do what we want in our own communities. We should embrace the principle of subsidiarity. We should accept that LA County is different from Miami-Dade County, which is different from Macomb County, Michigan, or DeSoto County, Mississippi. All these places, and again, you don't even have to go down to the county level. Let's just go to the state level. Obviously, Washington, the state of Washington, is a very different place from South Carolina. People understand these things intuitively. So why should all these people share the same rules? This should be a bipartisan thing. Because people around this country, I think, are ready They understand that our politics is not working, and I think that they're very open to alternatives. I think it's very promising that you see similar words written in the pages of The Nation than were written in the pages of I think it was the New York Observer by Michael Malice all the way back in 2016. And so back to that article in The Nation, they actually did bring up a good point that I have not heard a leftist bring up ever. I think the only people I ever hear talk about this are people like Thomas DiLorenzo and Tom Woods and people associated with the Mises Institute, and that's that secession in this country was not that was not the exclusive purview of the Southerners and the Confederates. The first people who wanted to secede from the Union were Northerners. They were the abolitionists. They were tired of being yoked to to a slave-owning union, this union that had protections for the slave states, and rightfully so. I mean, they were mad about the fugitive slave laws, which made it so that even if a slave escaped from the South to a free state in the North, the Southern slave owner had the right to go and catch their slave and bring him back. And that was the federal government imposing that. So these northern states said, hey, let's secede, let's kick the federal government out, and then if we are able to help some of these slaves escape to the North, we can protect them. And so William Lloyd Garrison, back in the 1850s, was advocating that the North secede. I believe so was Lysander Spooner. And that's why these people during the Civil War, they didn't want to fight a civil war. They said, no, kick the South out. We don't want the South. We'll be able to do much more to help the slaves rather than, starting a war that kills hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, people forget that. The Civil War was horrible. Nobody should ever defend that. It was not a good idea. Abraham Lincoln is one of the worst presidents in American history because he unleashed that bloodshed. He chose to fight that war. There was no reason why it had to. If Abraham Lincoln cared about the slaves, which, I mean, I understand he was an abolitionist, but I don't think he really cared about them as people. He wanted to ship them back to Africa. But he certainly didn't care about the people of the North or the South. He didn't care about human life at all, based on how he, prosecuted that war. He could have chosen just to say this, what he cared about was preserving the Union. That's what, any Republican who loves Lincoln, that's what they always tell you about him. Oh, he preserved the Union. That's why everything in the Republican Party, they always name everything after Abraham Lincoln or Ronald Reagan. Abraham Lincoln saved the American Union, and Ronald Reagan destroyed the Soviet Union. That's what these guys are held up for. And so I think the good, abolitionists, a lot of whom were, very deep Christians, they wanted to save the souls of these people because there was a certain segments of Protestantism believed that a slave could not be saved and that you had to be a freedman. You had to freely choose to submit yourself to Christ. And so to these people, a lot of these abolitionists, this was a very serious matter. They weren't just abolitionists for economic reasons, like a lot of the labor union type of people were, even though there weren't labor unions at that time. And so it's very encouraging to see a lefty magazine. I wouldn't say like far left, The Nation. I mean, The Nation was started as a progressive magazine. Ironically, The Nation was originally all about bringing the country together. It was like Teddy Roosevelt New Nationalism was what The Nation was all about. It was about having a strong central government. Now you have someone in the pages of The Nation advocating for secession. I'm very happy to see that. But yes, secession is a neutral concept. It should not be, it's a very third grade, one-dimensional way of thinking to where you think, oh, secession, slavery. It's absurd, and gladly that the conditioning is starting to break. And luckily, I don't think that there's anyone who has a strong enough will. I don't think there's any bad people with a strong enough will, like Abraham Lincoln did back then, who could carry out something like the American Civil War to try and preserve the Union and impose their will across the whole country, because that takes a very strong man to do that. Abraham Lincoln was a strong man. He suspended habeas corpus. He imprisoned journalists. He was a dictator. He was an elected dictator, but he asserted dictatorial power. He ruled with an iron fist and, caused the death of a substantial portion of the U.S. population. There is no one capable of that in the American political stage today. The fact of the matter is that we have, as Tucker Carlson put it, very unimpressive elites, and that's both, a blessing and a curse. It's bad while they're in charge because it's like, oh my gosh, you have these idiots who are telling us all what to do. This is torture. But the good thing is that if they get weak enough to the point to where people challenge their rule, they are not strong enough to try and defend themselves. If people in red states and people in blue states just all of a sudden say to the federal government, we don't care about you anymore, you're not doing us any good, the federal government goes away. It's that simple. California, if they want to, they should just withhold their tax dollars. Newsom should say to his people, Newsom might be out of there, but whoever the next governor is should say to their people, hey, we're not paying our income tax to the federal government anymore. You just pay that directly to the state of California. We'll do a much better job handling your money. And New York could do the same thing. Massachusetts, all of these net tax-paying states, if they did that, there you go. Union's over. And so the more I see stuff like this, even though it got ratioed on Twitter, unfortunately, but it got ratioed by people like on the right saying, good, get out. We'd be happy if you leave. It wasn't people, they didn't get ratioed, the nation on Twitter, because people were calling them neo-Confederates. That didn't happen, thankfully. So I even though they did get ratioed, I feel positive about what I was seeing. Because the closer we get to that point, the closer we will get to true de-escalation. The closer we can get to just frankly getting on with our lives. Because, the more time that people spend fighting about politics, the less time that they have to actually do important things in their life, like raise their family or, build up a business or, invent new ideas and things. So I think that's about all I have to say on this matter. If you get anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.